What was really going on with the Rebel Alliance? Did their plans actually make sense? We'll discuss all of that and more in today's video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So we've got a really interesting question from Lightspeed Victory. Shout out, 7 years subscribed to the channel. That's almost since the very beginning. But they ask, what was the endgame strategy for victory that the Rebel Alliance had for defeating the Empire? Did they have one, or was it going to be perpetual guerrilla warfare? Great question. Thanks for asking it so many times. It was always on my list to get to it, and today's the day. Make sure you guys get your questions in, by the way, by including the hashtag AskEck in a comment down below. So the main source to answer this question is the Essential Guide to Warfare, and I assume Lightspeed Victory is not surprised to hear that given their mention of Operation Domino. So Operation Domino was an early Rebel Alliance strategy meant to defeat the Empire in what the book calls showpiece battles. Big confrontations across worlds, which would see the Empire expelled from planets which the Rebel Alliance would then claim for their own territory. This failed for several reasons, even ignoring the sheer size of the Imperial military, and to be fair, there were backwater worlds. The Empire would be slow to reinforce. The Rebel Alliance was lacking the resources, the standardization, and the training to outright face down the Empire in a prolonged ground engagement. Reading from the book, 100 sector forces had mustered infantry brigades, but this was only part of an army. Some lacked bases, others lacked air support or spare parts, most lacked training. So Domino was a failure. The Rebel Alliance also suffered a really devastating defeat at Deep Space Besh, and again, this is in Star Wars Legends. So the Alliance was reorganized and developed a new strategy. Remain flexible, remain on the outskirts, and simply hit the Empire wherever possible. This is where starfighters start to see increased prominence, the X-Wing and Y-Wing especially. Only a few planets like Mon Calamari were outright held for the Rebel Alliance, and the Rebel fleet, which had become more centralized and more powerful, somewhat ironically given their general strategy, did not routinely engage the Empire. So what was the Rebel plan for success? Well, they certainly weren't expecting a Battle of Endor to crop up. They didn't think they could inflict a killing blow militarily. Rather, the Rebel Alliance sought a psychological victory, one which would see the galaxy essentially come together to throw off the Imperial yoke. The Rebel Alliance was devoted nearly entirely to offensive operations against the Empire and sought through actions to undermine Imperial rule. Both Rebel defeats and major victories, like at the Battle of Yavin, were bringing more defectors and volunteers to the Alliance's side, and the battle really was for the hearts and minds of the galaxy. As that was happening, the Rebel Alliance would seek to install more cells and small operations across basically every system in the galaxy. You have to remember, much of the Empire's military might was predicated on perceived strength and the Tarkin Doctrine, the idea that the Empire was everywhere, that it was invincible, that it was infinite. The Empire, of course, while large, was not infinite in power, and the Rebel Alliance exposed this with their win at the Battle of Yavin. I've done a video on this in the past, but the Empire after Yavin was thrown into several really difficult situations. First of all, the Rebel Alliance did not immediately evacuate Yavin, and that was because they were waiting for the final construction on the Executor to finish. The worry was that if the Empire dedicated forces to Yavin, well, the rebels would either simply flee, hitting them somewhere else, embarrassing them, or even worse, they would manage to outright fight the Imperial forces, making them look quite weak. This is part of the reason why Death Squadron was created. The Navy created a mobile, purpose-built task force to hunt down the Rebel Alliance so they wouldn't have to move forces away from other sectors, weakening them and making them them ripe for rebel counterattacks. Perhaps even more terrifying for the Empire was the perspective of attacking Mon Calamari, which was now in open revolt and building ships for the Rebel Alliance. Mon Calamari was certainly a symbol for the rest of the galaxy, and an open counterattack which failed to honestly outright destroy the planet would have been a symbol for other worlds, especially other powerful worlds, to consider openly supporting the Rebel Alliance in a way that no one else really was. However, as with the Executor, the Empire had another hammer in production, a far more powerful one this time, the second Death Star. So the plan was to trick the Rebel Alliance into a final confrontation, offering bait so attractive that the rebels would break out of their current strategy, after which the Empire would not only hopefully take out the fleet, but then destroy Mon Calamari and other rebellious worlds like Chandrila with combined Imperial forces powered by the second Death Star. And I think that situation sort of explains the end game for the Rebel Alliance, in that there wasn't going to be one decisive action. There wouldn't have been a Battle of Endor but for Palpatine's machinations. Rather, they were fighting a longer-term battle which would have seen planets hopefully join their cause, openly resist the Empire, while slowly eroding Imperial rule. Now, maybe that would have eventually culminated in an assassination attempt on Palpatine. Surely the Alliance would have engaged in more large-scale attacks, perhaps targeting shipyards or other crucial worlds. But remember, the Rebel Alliance was also limping after the attack on Hoth. But on the other hand, they were also increasingly being seen as more legitimate. The Essential Guide to Warfare also outlines how Admiral Akbar himself did a great job of changing the Alliance's perception away from scattered terrorists to organized rebel forces seeking to re-establish a republic-style government in the galaxy. And I'm guessing that this increased organization and cooperation, while still remaining mobile and primarily an offensive unit, would have been most of the end game for the Rebel Alliance. And you got to also remember where they started out. In both canon and legends, the early Rebel Alliance was essentially the joining of disparate rebel groups under one banner and also under one leadership group. I think had the war continued, especially if the second Death Star had entered the action, there would have been more Imperial defectors, and I think that the second Death Star itself, as such an awful weapon of terror, would have inspired other planets out of necessity to join the cause and fight against Palpatine. But those are basically my thoughts. I hope you let me know yours down below. I do have one final question to answer, and this one comes from Miss Skywalker, who says, will you continue with the Battle of the Dreadnought series? It has over 5.5 million views. And honestly, I would love to. I was really happy with the performance of that first video, of course, plus it gave me B-roll I've been using ever since. A lot of it comes down to the fact that E.C. Henry just has not been available, which is understandable. He's been doing his own things. If he is, or if I decide at some point to go with another animator, yeah, that might be possible. Right now, the revenue from Star Wars, the views, it's way down, so it is a bit harder to finance these riskier projects, but I do have a few animations at the very least, like the Supremacy one I did, or the Scientifically Accurate Death Star, which you'll hopefully see released this year. But that's all I've got. Let me know what you guys would like to see in those animations down below, and I love you guys. See you next time. May the Force be with you.